thank you so much for coming over. I don't know what I would do without you. Seriously. Okay, so here's the thing. How are you doing in the class? Are you doing okay with it? I'm doing all right with it. It's actually really interesting most of the time, but it's just, I'm so bad about making sure that I study and do the work. I guess that's something that maybe a lot of teachers and stuff have said about me, just a typical you'd do fine if only you applied yourself kind of thing. So, yeah, you coming over to help me buckle down and study this is a huge help. Seriously. So, I don't know how much you know about or where you are in the book. I did not get far at all. I only got to right past the introduction. So I read through, I saw the explanation about the wheel of the year and the different holidays and when they occur, and also how they're different in each of the hemispheres. So, and that was interesting. But I think I stopped at old ways. I think I read the first couple of pages, but I probably should reread them and go over this a little bit. So how about I will read some of it and you take notes. Will you take notes? And then I can make a copy. How does that sound? I don't mind reading out loud, but it's a matter of will I do it on my own time? Will I do the homework? That's mostly what I struggle with. Everything feels tedious, even if it's subject matter that I'm interested in, it's just hard. But it's easier with a friend, so. Okay, anyways, so this is basically saying that the best known of harvest festivals was the Eleusinian mysteries, which was a week long and in ancient Greece and fell close to the autumn equinox. And that Mabon is a modern addition to these celebrations of harvest, sacrifice, and survival. And that it's often known as Pagan Thanksgiving. But it can also be acknowledged as Pagan Easter because of the dying god myths. So, okay. So basically, though, it's about a change in the season and what that signifies. Okay, so this is just going over the equinoxes and when they happen. The equinox is not just a one-day event. It can happen over a span of 2 or 3 days, depending on the location. Jeez. It's really coming down out there. Since fall equinox traditions center on the work of the harvest, allowing a few days to acknowledge the shifting light makes sense. Few farmers or gardeners can haul in all their new growth over the course of a single day. Harvesting is a process that takes weeks, sometimes months. The work of gathering begets the work of winnowing, stacking, pickling, baking, and preserving. As the light wanes, the urgency of the work increases. It also makes a note about astrology and the fall equinox. And it says, Libra, represented by the scales, is uniquely appropriate. That's my sign. So maybe I'll super relate to this holiday celebration. The sign that represents level-headed balance and careful judgment is the most necessary outlook to have when preparing for a rougher season to come. Harvest requires decisions about what to store and what to consume. What should we leave to decay in the fields? What bulbs should we plant in the ground to await the force of spring equinox? What can we safely do without through the winter? For those who plan their lives according to astrological precepts, Libra and the autumn equinox mark a time to harvest what you've grown in the past year and a time to take an honest look at what you need to let go. You need not drop everything right away. Operating on these astrological and seasonal cycles does give you some time for a gentle separation. You can also use the coming of the sign as a time to take precautions. Start a savings plan, get your flu shots, put that lock on your credit report. And then it just kind of talks about how we're not all that different from these ancestors that we speak about from so long ago. We still depend on food to grow somewhere, even though it may not be by our own hand. That we're subject to seasonal changes, weather changes, environmental concerns. We touch the same earth, the same water, and the same air. While we often describe ourselves as being half from one parent and half from the other, the truth is far more complex. We are half a composite of our mother's ancestors and half a composite of our fathers. We are not mere deposits from the generation before. We are a complex result of history. Even the most humble life has an ancient heritage attached, expressed as the DNA helix wraps and relinks to purpose a new being, a new take on all that has come before. All right. Oh, goodness. All right, so let's talk about, we'll go back to the Greek harvest festival. The Eleusinian. It's too bad, books don't have little pronunciation bubbles like websites do. A sacred harvest festival in ancient Greece. Archaeologists and historians have successfully pieced together some of the practices from the festival. Much remains a mystery, including why so many parts of the celebration remained secret. How do we know they remained secret if they're secret? The influence of these mysteries spread across Europe. More than one scholar has speculated that later pagan harvest traditions have roots in Eleusis. I don't know. Okay, so it tells a Greek tale, where Demeter and Persephone, Pluto fell in love with Persephone and kidnapped her from the fields where she played, taking her back to his kingdom in Hades. When Demeter discovered her child missing, she searched everywhere on earth for her. When at last she received word that Pluto was keeping her child, Demeter refused to let anything on earth grow. Zeus, realizing that all his people would starve and die, was going to relent and insist Pluto release Persephone. Unfortunately, Persephone consumed 6 seeds from a pomegranate during her stay in the underworld. Because she had partaken the food of the dead, she became part of that kingdom, and according to the laws of nature, could not ascend to the world of the living. Demeter held firm, refusing to let anything else grow, and so Zeus, with the help of his messenger Hermes, negotiated a partial release so that Persephone could come to the land every spring and return at autumn to rule the dead beside her husband. While no one knows all of the events that conspired at the festival of the Eleusinian mysteries, scholars have fragments of information about the practices, and they know that ancient Greeks took it very seriously. The festival of the Greater Mysteries happened once every 4 years and lasted 9 or 10 days. Interesting. It always began at the full moon before the autumn equinox and included a procession. During this procession, farmers carried a holy basket in a consecrated cart while shouting, "Hail Demeter." It's conjectured that the festival participants sacrificed a pregnant sow to Demeter. Oh my gosh, we got sacrifices. According to Aidan Kelly, at the climax, someone placed a mildly sedated little boy on a swing and pushed him across a giant bonfire. The swing then returned with a ram in the boy's place. At some point, a gong would sound, and the priestess of Persephone appeared. Many of the known symbols of the Eleusinian mystery tradition, such as grain and seeds, are also symbols in modern pagan harvest and mystery traditions. Harvest Home is the English name for the harvest festival that occurred near fall equinox throughout Europe. Some ancient pagans also referred to this time as the ingathering. You should probably write that down. Many of these traditions came from old pagan fertility rituals. Over time, the ruling church dedicated the rituals to Christian saints instead of the original pagan gods. Other elements of these harvest traditions have roots not only in paganism, but in feudal traditions where the farm laborers were serfs with their lives tied to land. They farmed from birth. Okay. Harvest was a labor-intensive season, possibly the hardest work of the year. Consequently, the festival was one of combined work and play, with a great deal of merriment used to offset the serious business of preparation for winter. Harvest Home was more than a festival for the reapers. Entire villages decorated doors with wreaths, and villagers hung fruit of the harvest from arches throughout the town. Rituals in the form of games were very much part of the reaping process, especially when collecting the last sheaves. He's going to lay down in the other room. These games address the reapers' belief in an immanent spirit that lived in the corn. Some areas saw the spirit as benevolent and others feared it. In Bavaria, people believed the corn mother punished farmers for their sins with bad crops. In Germany, reapers would sometimes hit the crop with a flail to drive out the wolf, thus driving evil spirits out of the fields before the reaping. The collection of these sheaves often spoke to that culture's feelings about the spirit of the corn. Okay. Harvest Home, the feast that happened after the reapers cut the last sheaf, had different names and nicknames around Great Britain. Some called it the Feast of the Ingathering, others a Mel Supper, and some just called it Horky or a Skodal. The same as the reapers' electoral feast. At this feast, landowners sat down with those who worked their land. This dinner concluded all wage negotiations for the year. This also made it a village celebration, since most of the villagers also worked the lord of the manor's land. The supper itself had many local traditions around it, from what people ate to games and dancing after the meal. Usually the corn dolly sat in the center of the feast table or presided over the feast, if the event was large. In England, two men sometimes dressed up as a black sow and pinched or pricked random guests at the feast. Other times, the head reaper exited the feast and came back dressed as Lord. Then he collected money from the other reapers so that they could again go to an alehouse for a harvest after party. The games often included cockfighting, pig catching, and wrestling. When the Christian church became dominant in Europe, Harvest Home's festivals kept their pagan flavor but adopted Christian saints' names. So Harvest Home became the three separate festivals that all converged near the autumn equinox. The Feast of the Nativity of St. Mary, September 8th. The Feast of St. Michael, September 29th, that's my birthday. And the Feast of St. Martin, November 11th. Michaelmas, or the Feast of St. Michael, retained the traditions with the closest relationship to Harvest Home. The first known Michaelmas celebration happened in 1011, named for the Archangel Michael. September 29th became both a harvest festival and a time of taking stock, hiring help, and settling debts. The English called these days of financial settlement quarter days, as they took place 4 times a year. Around Michaelmas, I assume it's Michaelmas, just like Christmas, Michaelmas, Michaelmas. Families decided which animal to keep through the winter and how many to sell or slaughter. Intended to replace the Harvest Home, Michaelmas marked the point near the end of the reaping season and concluded with a dinner for landowners and tenants. These dinners gave landowners an opportunity to collect their seasonal rents. Okay. Tenants of the 16th century presented landlords with a goose on Michaelmas in addition to their quarter-day rent payments. Eating a roast goose became a key Michaelmas tradition that eventually moved to Christmas. Livestock at the time constituted rent, making the bills settled on this day especially significant, since the results of the harvest might determine whether a family had a home during the cold season. A saying in the British Isles that be told of the importance of this holiday was, "Eat a goose on Michaelmas Day and want not for the money all year." For money all the year. The Scottish served bannock at Michaelmas, a cake with a scone-like texture made from cereal grains and then cooked in a lambskin. In Ireland, some baked a ring into a pie that was eaten at Michaelmas dinner. The person who found the ring was to be married in the next year, hopefully not choking and dying at dinner. The Irish also considered Michaelmas an excellent day for fishing, perhaps because it was the last good day to do so for the year. After Protestantism spread through England, many churches replaced Michaelmas with Harvest Festival and revamped Harvest Home. So it's kind of gone through naming and revamping over and over. The myths about gods that die and return highlight the spiritual connection between the Eleusinian mysteries, Harvest Home, Michaelmas, and Mabon. The harvest must end with death, and survival needs a plan. The farmer nurtured, fed, and cultivated the grain, creating a bond of survival with the plant. When harvest time comes, that relationship ends. As the wheel of the year turns, so the end of Mabon marks the barest of beginnings of winter, and as each day of autumn fades, all look toward the cold, wondering what else we will lose to the coming darkness. It's kind of sad. So this goes on to new ways. Do you want to take notes for this one too? I'm just going to try to maybe not read it word for word, but just give you a little, things to note. Pagan pride. Wow, okay. What is this? Autumn is the time of the largest pan-pagan celebration in the world, Pagan Pride. At this event, pagans around the world gather to host public rituals and run a food drive. Their purpose is to educate the public about pagan religions and thus to reduce xenophobia. Each celebration differs just a little bit. Some run it like a street fair, others like a small convention, and others just host a picnic and invite the public. Pagans that participate in Pagan Pride often see the event as a sort of community reunion and an opportunity to interact with those outside of their immediate spiritual circles. The public is invited and is encouraged to talk to pagans about their beliefs and practices. Pagan Pride borrowed its name directly from the gay pride movement. That seems silly. You can have pride about anything. Both movements celebrate individuals choosing openness about who they are rather than hiding to protect themselves from society's sensibilities. While no one knows exactly when the first Pagan Pride event happened, an official Pagan Pride project grew out of Cecilina Dewar's work with Pagan Awareness League in 1997. Dewar proposed 3 elements to the project. First, that in every location that could gather enough pagans, they host an event with at least one ritual open to the public, pagan and non-pagan alike. Second, that the Pride event runs a food drive in honor of Mabon and other Thanksgiving holidays of the autumn season, and to serve as a reminder to pagans of their responsibilities to city, state, and country. Third, that organizers invite the press so they could see some positive portrayals of paganism outside of the Halloween season. In 1998, the world saw the first international Pagan Pride project with 17 communities in the United States and 1 community in Canada participating. It had a total attendance of around 900 people. In 2000, Pagan Pride gained coverage from the New York Times, held its first events in Rome, Great Britain, and Brazil, and donated 8,671 pounds of food and several $1,000s to charity. By 2005, the Pagan Pride Project counted over 40,000 attendees globally, while Pagan Pride International has stopped tracking its data. The celebrations around Mabon continue every year. Wow, that is so fascinating. All right, now that we can... So that's a little bit of like the history of harvest festivals in Mabon, and where, like, I guess now we're going to get to some more modern ideas about it. Mabon is both celebratory and solemn. It happens at one of the busiest times of the year for many people, with themes of gratitude, death, grief, and looming winter. This is a time to acknowledge mixed feelings and do our best to tend to our inner balance. It's important to take time out to hear ourselves and hear the divine at these action-packed phases of life. Because it is the harvest, it is also a spiritual act to go about routine organizing to make life flow all the more easily in the cold season. So suggested activities are to prepare for winter. Even the most trivial action can become spiritual if performed with intent. Therefore, Mabon can be a day of spiritually getting organized. You may wish to partake in practical winter preparation activities, plant bulbs to bloom in the spring, winterize your house, or even go over your calendars and to-do lists to ensure you get as much done as you can in small chunks. Canning, freezing, pickling, drying, going outside, watching the sunset, watching the sunrise, honoring the harvest moon, host a barbecue, roast nuts, go apple picking, go to wine or beer tastings, build a bonfire, go dancing, make a corn dolly, make a wreath, visit horses, have a procession, make a harvest basket, participate in pagan pride, perform a sacrifice. Okay. I think I'm gonna stop here because I'm like way over just reading. But thank you for taking notes. I'm gonna take a copy of those before you go. Maybe we can finish the book next time. So it goes on to talk about rituals and spells and other things. So maybe we can get into those a little bit. Yeah, it's a lot to take in. I'm learning, but it's tough. It's just, I don't know. When I read, I don't retain very well. So I kind of have to go over it and go over it and over it over and over again. But, yeah. Okay. I'm done. Makes me tired. Alright, though. I'm just gonna take a copy of your notes and then we can maybe finish maybe the day after tomorrow. Are you free? Would you want to come back? Take notes by the light of the flame. We gotta get in the spirit. Maybe next time I'll make us a nice Mabon snack where we can have apples and pumpkin pie or something, or roast nuts. That sounds nice, doesn't it? It's like the history stuff, it's a little hard for me to memorize, but the modern traditions are really relatable. To think that you could let go, spiritually, and plan, kind of be at one with everything while you're doing something like making dried apples or a wreath for the door. It puts more purpose into everything, and I think that's the most important part, and it's especially personal. Yeah. Maybe we'll do that next time. Maybe.